Sadie Cohen, Bounty Hunter, Part 2, by Glory Fink. Content advisory. Adult language, flirtation, implied nudity, gender disguise, and sensual themes, intended for mature readers. Part 2 is not for the faint of heart. I mean it. If you have a heart condition, blood pressure issues, or you're too young for such content, just skip forward to Part 3, Clemency and Other Acts of Faith, which has no spicy content at all in it. Just wholesome, heartfelt storytelling about Sadie and Clem's backgrounds. If you are not prepared for such scintillating, tantalizing, titillating, and sensational content, please stop listening right now. Have they left? I'm taking your word for it that you are cleared by your healthcare providers and or parents to listen to this spicy story. All right, let's proceed. Previously, in Part 1, Tex Deadly Rides at Moonrise. Sadie Cohen, disguised as the bounty hunter Tex Deadly, takes on a low-stakes but high-charm bounty, Clem Johnson, a horse thief with a soft voice, a pretty face, and a knack for trouble. Tracking him to his hideout near Crystal Lake, Sadie captures him with care, a lullaby, a blanket, and gentle restraint. On the ride back to Theodore Junction, the lines between outlaw and bounty hunter blur. Clem might be tied up, but his words strike deep, flirting not just with Tex, but with the woman Sadie keeps hidden. It's hard to tell if he's guessing, bluffing, or seducing, but whatever it is, it rattles Sadie more than she'd like to admit. Part 2, Cards on the Table, Clothes on the Floor, by Glory Fink. Wilson Stables went nice and smooth. I handed Clem the 2 horses and the wagon in for $150 cash. As I untied Clem, rope ain't cheap, you know, I uttered low in his ear, "When you get out, come see me for that whiskey, and maybe a bath." And with my rope and cash, I mounted Buckaroo and headed out of town towards Badass for a hot bath over at Chang's Bathhouse, where, for a generous tip, a private bath can be acquired, and then on to Goldie's Tavern, where I would be assured of a hot meal and a snuggle in a warm bed with my best girl, Millie. About a week later, I was practicing my shooting out behind the newspaper where I rent the second floor for my in-town apartment. Clem came out of the newspaper's back door and sat on a barrel waiting for me to finish my timed practice. "Howdy, Tex. I see you're still as fine a shot as your reputation implies. Perhaps even better." Clem never liked to miss an opportunity to butter up a person. "Good afternoon, Clem. I wasn't expecting to see you so soon. How did your gilt-edged tongue get you out of jail so quickly?" "Well," he drawled, "I happened to hear about a planned train robbery. Turns out the train line was so grateful they paid my debt to Wilson Stables and rewarded me handsomely as well. My goodness, what a turn of fortune. I needed to come to town for some supplies, and I thought now would be a good time to visit my good friend Tex, drink a little whiskey, perhaps have a hot bath, see where the evening takes me." My stomach and tinderbox both quivered with excitement. Perhaps Clem just wanted to spend the evening drinking, I countered. Maybe he thinks Miss Sadie is a separate person. My stomach leadened. Clem interrupted my thoughts. "I hope you don't mind. I stowed my bedroll in your room. Miss Goldie says there aren't any beds available in town unless I know of a friend I could stay with. She said a multitude of Easterners recently arrived to either homestead or stake claims up in the mountains to mine." What an excuse. "Please do stay at my place tonight," I tried to say in a calm and dignified manner. "I'll go over to Chang's Bathhouse for a hot soak and bring a whiskey bottle back with me. I smell your stew cooking, so if there's enough for both of us, this'll work out beautifully. Have you ever played pinochle? We can play that after supper if you're interested," he said with the enthusiasm of a young boy. I marveled at how quickly Clem could transform from self-assured rake to playful child at the idea of an evening of stew and card games. Dinner went well. I grew up playing pinochle, so after a few rounds and glasses of whiskey, one thing led to another and we were playing strip pinochle. The only problem was, it turns out I'm a much better pinochle player than Clem. How the hell am I going to casually reveal myself to him and get him into bed before he gets whiskey dick? I was genuinely starting to worry this was going to end up being a platonic night of newfound friendship. All I wanted to do was run my hands all over his newly scrubbed body, kiss him in places I hadn't seen on a man in so long. The curiosity of what this man's mouth tastes like was obsessively filling my thoughts. and yet he kept losing every game. It was infuriating. My secret spot was getting so slick, I was starting to worry I'd wet my breeches. "Have you ever ruffled cabbage?" Clem burst out. My face froze. How to answer this loaded question? But if I'm honest, I was on my second glass of whiskey. How was I going to get this man into bed? And then I could hear my mother's voice clear as a bell. "If you want a man to want you, ask him to teach you something. It doesn't matter if you wrote the book on the subject, men get aroused showing off. When a man thinks you're admiring him and his impressive knowledge, it makes the blood drain from his brain and fill the flesh in between his legs, my Sadie. "I don't reckon I have. Would you be willing to show me?" I replied to Clem. He was a little tipsy, so he put his cards down and started gesticulating. "It is my pleasure. See, what you've got to remember is a woman is like a delicate flower down there. A man must approach that flower with a respect and reverence, but also an air of delight and playfulness." He blinked at me a bit. That second glass was starting to take effect. I moved the whiskey bottle out of his reach as I leaned toward him as if I was hanging on his every word. I didn't realize I was going to get a lecture on the intimate ticklings of womenfolk. Clem continued, "Start off real gentle-like, placing your warm hand on the spot where her legs come together. Softly stroke her furry bits until she starts spreading her legs. Keep petting her, but move your hand down to her lips." It was like he was in a trance or a dream. His eyes were closed as he demonstrated in the air. It struck me as a bit absurd for Clem to explain to me how to arouse a woman, but I've learned that I become a surprisingly patient person when I'm trying to get some barn loft action. Without once opening his eyes to see if I was paying attention, how could I not? Clem explained, "You'll know your approach is appreciated by the lady if her parting becomes warm and wet. Do not be alarmed. Your lovely flower has not pissed herself. This is her special nectar. Some other night, remind me to tell you about special daring ladies who will allow you to partake of their life-giving nectar in exchange for your kiss. But I digress. As you are stroking and petting, allow a finger to part her nectared folds." I see he was getting poetic. This must be one of his favorite subjects. What would he do if I asked him to show me his technique while laying in my bed? Would he run screaming into the night if I stripped down right this moment? Damn, but I was raring to have at it like a young bull in his first field. I need to take some deep breaths and clear my head. I'm just going to have to take charge of the situation, although if he runs screaming into the night, I'm going to be sore vexed to not shoot him on principle alone. It's just a risk we're going to have to take. "Well, Clem," I said, "it's getting late. I've got to head to bed. I see you have a bedroll, but all the same, you're welcome to sleep in my bed. It's an extra big bed I bought from a Mormon who was leaving town in a hurry once it became obvious his wife and her sister were both very pregnant." I started hanging up my clothes. Clem opened his eyes and watched me strip with an amount of interest that gave me hope. I was facing away from him as I got down to my long underwear, took a deep breath, and turned around to face him, genteel globes and all. I watched his Adam's apple as he took a big gulp of air. We just looked at each other for what seemed like a week, but was probably only a moment. He just kept sitting there. I walked over to my apartment door that opened to the stairs that led to the first floor of the newspaper as well as the back door to the building. I locked the door bolt, took another deep breath, and turned back toward Clem. He was still sitting, but had moved to face me at the door. I smiled a little to show him I meant no harm, then walked over to the basin to wash my face and hands, lit a kerosene safety lamp I keep by my bedside on an end table. I normally snuff out the other lamps when I'm heading to bed. If you don't object, I'll go ahead and do that now, I said to Clem. I was hoping he'd say something, relieve the palpable tension in the room, but all that man did was not a damn thing. He'd been struck silent by my revelation. I sighed, realizing that a man in shock likely doesn't possess a working manhood at that moment. Oh well. I had my heart set on handling his manliness. I was a milkmaid at my first paying job, and I very much enjoyed working all those lovely warm teats and the grateful mooing and mewing from my lovely lady cows. I turned out the other lamps, got into bed, yes, still wearing my long underwear. A woman's got to keep herself warm one way or another. The awkward silence was deafening, but I refused to feel any shame or embarrassment about this evening, or how I seemed to have derailed Clem's fun. If you can call a drunken lecture on the philosophical aspects of pleasing a woman fun. Ah, hell, I might as well get back to how I like to enjoy my quiet evenings alone. Reading adventure stories from my favorite magazine, Daring Do magazine, and, depending on the story, touching myself in an intimate way. I settled into bed and opened the magazine to the feature story, How the Chambermaid Became a Pirate. Howdy ho! This was going to be a collar heater for sure. The story unfolded with the chambermaid freely tussling around in the sheets with the country lord's son, who was home for Christmas from Oxford College. But then they got caught, and she was shunned and made destitute by the lord at her village. I was touching myself by this point, and Clem was watching me, so I moaned out loud so he could hear me. If he'd been a cat, he couldn't have been any clearer about his ears perking up. I now had my audience on the edge of his seat. Clem cleared his throat and said real low, Miss, Tex, would it still be all right if I joined you? Only if you clean yourself enough not to smell like a wet saddle, I replied. I don't lay with a man who smells like a goat in my sheets. That got him hustling to the wash basin, scrubbing like he was ready to scrub his skin clean off. He even lifted his manhood and gave it a proper rinse. I watched, arms crossed, pretending I wasn't impressed. Don't forget behind, I said. You ain't getting a parade, but you best be pink before you crawl into my bed. Yes, ma'am, he said with a grin I felt behind my knees. When he finished, I handed him a towel, slow and deliberate, letting my fingers linger on his damp wrist. He was warm all over and flushed from scrubbing, or maybe from nerves. I'm not a biscuit, I warned as he reached for me. Don't go grabbing like you're hungry unless you want me to slap your hand. Understood, he said in a serious tone. You got my full respect and admiration. We climbed into bed like co-conspirators in a well-planned heist. His hands were warm, mine were patient. He asked me to keep reading the pirate story while he touched me, so I did, my voice steady, even when my breath wanted to hitch. Then he asked real quiet, You ever been kissed down there? I blinked at him. I don't know, should I be? He showed me. He was eager, a little clumsy, but heartfelt. There's something beautiful about a man trying hard to please. Something holy, even. But there was still something missing. So I guided him with my hands, my mouth, and finally, when he was ready, I showed him what a milkmaid really knows how to do. That night, we made each other sweat, stammer, and sing twice. And when the kerosene lamp burned down low, he held me like I was a secret worth keeping. Coming soon in Part 3, Clemency and Other Acts of Fate. It's the week after Sadie turned in Clem Johnson for a $50 bounty. She's used to waking up alone, and she's certainly not used to sharing that space with someone who sees her in ways she isn't sure how to name. Between pots of coffee, eggs, and shared memories of grief and family, the pair discover that loneliness isn't the only thing they have in common. As Sadie wrestles with tenderness, history, and the politics of identity, the next chapter in this strange partnership begins to take root over hash and shared knowledge. Thanks for riding along with Sadie Cohen Bounty Hunter. Your support makes all the difference, truly. If you enjoyed this installment, tap the heart button, leave a comment, Sadie loves gossip, or you can even buy us a coffee if you're feeling generous. Don't miss Sadie's next adventure. Be sure to subscribe to Glorious Magazine. And stay connected with all the magic brewing over at Coffee Bunny Crafters Cafe. You can find me on Blue Sky, Instagram, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and TikTok. I look forward to interacting with you there. Thank you, and we'll see you at the next installment.